So I want to talk a little bit about the chapters that come immediately after the four kind of strange from different points of view chapters. So starting on page 258 and going to 277. The first one is all from Paul D's point of view. And it starts off, he's starting, to tell his life story. And he, in the beginning of his life, he doesn't remember a whole lot. He talks about having two brothers. All three of them had the same mother and different fathers, right? So half brothers, and evidently they were sold to Sweet Home and Mr. Garner very early in his life because he remembers nothing else. He doesn't remember his mother. He doesn't remember being anywhere but on Sweet Home. So he was there for the first 20 years at least that he remembers, if not his life. Consequently, that was a sweet home to him, because we know that, and I know that it talks about Mr. Garner's brand of slavery being not as harsh as others, right? And we see how that kind of unfolds a little bit. But he talks about being there, and how everything changed once school teacher came, and how everything fell apart. On page 260, he says, for years, well, it says, the text says, for years Paul D. believed school teacher broke into children what Mr. Garner had run off into men. And it was that made them run off. Now, plagued by the contents of his tobacco tin, he wondered how much difference there really was between school teacher and after. And that's what Sixto and Hallie had believed, that Sweet Home wasn't necessarily a sweet place, that Mr. Garner may have been different, but he was still a slave master and still treated them not, as people should be treated, not treated as people. And this raises the question for Paul D. What is a man? And if we think back to on page 81, way back, Paul D. is this is after he tells Setha that Hallie had seen when the nephews had taken her milk. And she's shocked by that. And he says, again, this is on page 81, a man ain't a goddamn axe. Chopping, hacking, busting every goddamn minute of the day. Things get to him, things he can't chop down because they're inside. And we know this is important because we know that he saw Hallie as a man, and he saw Sixto as a man. He questions it within himself. So we know that a man is not an axe, and the question becomes then, what is it? What do Hallie and Sixto have that he doesn't feel? One of those things is the family. He has his brothers, but his brothers are taken from him. We know that Paul F. was sold in order to kind of keep the farm up as school teacher was coming. We know that there were gunshots, and that we know that school teacher said that Paul A., he didn't mention him by name, of course, but that he was gone, that he had lost him. So we can assume that Paul A. had been killed. And so, in terms of family, Paul D. has nothing, as opposed to Hallie, who had a mother, who had a wife, who had at least 3, maybe 4 children. I don't know if he would have survived when Denver was born or not, because we don't ever know what happens to Hallie. And Sixto, part of the story of Sixto's death is that, as he's laughing in the fire and he yells out 70, 70, we know that the 30-mile woman was pregnant. And Paul D. kind of mentions this when they meet up right before the white people show up, and it says that she had a glow to her, a shining, right? And so he can even kind of see it in her. All right, so that's one possibility. Paul D talks about the envy of seeing those large families in Maryland that had lived on the same plantation for generations, and he would ask people, who's related to whom, and that sort of thing. That was something that he never had. But the question belongs to, still kind of haunts him at this point. What is a man, and is he a man? Was he a sweet home man, which meant that he was only a man because Mr. Garner said he was a man, or was there something else? He's confronted with this question of value, and is a man, what is the value of a man? And he learns that what his worth is, right? It's $900. That's what he is able to be sold for. Has a dollar amount placed on his head, which drives home the point. Yeah, and you can't be a man and property is kind of the assumption. If you are worth $900, does that precludes you from being a man? And this is the thing that starts to pack the tobacco tin, of his heart, where he packs all of these things in, and after being beaten down enough, it gets packed and it gets sealed, and that's what Beloved kind of brings out. But in this chapter, he doesn't come to any conclusion about what a man is. There seems to be something about the responsibility, being responsible for yourself. It talks about after leaving Alfred, Georgia, this is on page 261, he wanted simply to move, to go on, pick up one day and be somewhere else the next. Resigned to life without aunts, cousins, children, even a woman, until Setha, right? So the idea that, kind of forgetting about maybe even being a man altogether, right? But having Setha there, being able to maybe do those things that the men that he had admired, Sixo and Hallie, had to settle down and to have a family, to love other people. But then, of course, Beloved, right? And she moved him. That's on 261. Just one doubt, regret, and every single unasked question was packed away. Long after he believed he had willed himself into being, the very time and place he wanted to take root, she moved him from room to room like a rag doll. And that's that thing that keeps him from achieving what he thought he had wanted to. Right? So he's left with the question of what a man is, and is he a man? So there's the question of, why did Sixo laugh? When they're captured, he's singing. He grabs a gun, but because his hands are tied, right, he can't shoot anyone with it, and so he's just kind of swinging around. Somebody knocks him out, and when he wakes up, he's laughing and then yelling 7070 as they're trying to burn him. Why is he laughing? What does it mean? And I think that perhaps he has protected his the 30-mile woman and his child. That this is part of what Paul D might say being a man is. That he does protect them, and he does so through sacrifice. His laughing makes it so that he's not just chained up and they go to chase down everyone else who's left, but instead that they focus on him and what to do with him. So I think that's part of the sacrifice. Now the chapter that starts after this, which is page 271-ish. Yeah, 271. Stampede comes to talk to Paul D, and he first off, he apologizes for nobody offering to give him a place to stay, because Paul D is staying in the cellar at the church. And Paul D says, "Oh no, the preacher offered. He keeps on offering." But Paul D chooses to sleep in this place, and that, the reason, it's what he thinks of himself. He is not thinking of himself as a man. He is lower than that, and so he is literally sleeping in the lowest place he can find. And Stampede tells his story. And I think the important part, well, all of it's important. One of the important parts is the changing of his name, and making that choice to no longer be like Paul D has been moved by Beloved. He's been moved by school teacher from one plantation to another. He was moved then to Alfred, Georgia, and he tried. Well, he did escape there, but was moved on and couldn't stay with Cherokee, and had to move and keep on moving. But Stampede says, no, I'm no longer going to be controlled by them, and he changes his name. And I think that's symbolic of that his debt is paid, and he'll now be responsible for other people. But Stampede asks about Beloved, and Paul D says, she reminds me of something looked like I'm supposed to remember. That's on page 276, which is, kind of reminiscent of when Seth is talking about Beloved and how she makes Seth remember things about her own past, about her own mother, things that she hadn't remembered before. And that, there is always this question of what is beloved. I think it was one of the first journal prompts I posed to you, is what is the nature of beloved? Yes, it seems that she is the manifestation of the ghost version of the child who was killed. But she's certainly not just that, and certainly memory is important to who she is. And there's a connection there, and I think that's a connection that you should think about. And as we go on in the book, we'll see more of it. The final chapter is dealing with remembering and memory and things to be forgotten and things not to be forgotten. So we'll talk about that more later. Until then, I don't know. Be good people. Be responsible for your own learning. Learn a new skill. I don't know. Make the most of your Corona quarantines.